liberty, and justice for all.
Please stand for a moment of contemplative silence for our great country, its citizens, and those serving it around the world. Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Majority Leader Borgia.
Here.
Minority Leader Testa.
Here.
Mr. Boykin. Mr. Burrows. Here. Mr. Gelfarb.
Here.
Mr. Harcum.
Here.
Mr. Jenkins.
Here.
Mr. Mazzano. Here. Ms. Marcotte. Here. Ms. Parker. Here. Ms. Perez. Here. Ms. Shimsky.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Spreckman. Ms. Williams. Here. Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Present. Madam Clerk, we have one item for us today.
One item under special orders from the Committees on Federal and State Affairs, Labor, Parks, Planning and Housing, Legislation, and Budget Appropriations. A home rule request for an act to amend the Retirement and Social Security law in relation to disability retirement benefits for sheriffs, deputy sheriffs, under sheriffs, and correction officers in Westchester County.
Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular item is a home rule resolution as this clerk so aptly stated, to correct an error where a correction officer would receive a disability pension, but the amount is different based on whether the infliction of disability was created by an inmate or by an officer. This particular item was discussed in 4 committees to make sure that we had a complete understanding of this particular item. Mr. Chairman, you followed up with the actuary from the state of New York and the comptroller's office to ensure that we were having clear and complete information on this particular item. This particular item, again, is just clarifying something where a correction officer is injured while on duty by someone other than an inmate. And it's really that simple. The actuary gives us that information, and they're not really flexible about it. In the committee meeting today, we had Commissioner Berg as well as Budget Director Soul. There was some consideration about amortizing the particular item. I just want to add some letters to that, but amortizing the $1.05 million payment to catch things up. And understanding from the comptroller's office, it would require a 7.75% interest rate that the math just didn't make sense. So the Committee of Federal and State Affairs had this discussion and felt jointly with everyone else that the discussion had gone to the depths to understand all of the impact to Westchester County, and we have complete confidence in the Commissioner and Commissioner Chircofurco, who was there today as well, stating that this should be something that we move forward with. So move, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Legislator Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was voted out of the Budget and Appropriations Committee a couple hours earlier, so as previously stated, so moved for budget.
Okay. Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was discussed in length, actually twice. A couple of days ago in the Committee of Legislation, and then today joined with the other committee, so previously discussed. So moved.
Excellent. And Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of Labor, Parks, Housing, and Planning, as previously discussed, so moved.
Excellent. Legislators, comments, thoughts, questions. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did have extensive discussions on this item today. There were previous discussions on this item. I myself will be voting against this item today. On the issue of equity and fairness, this is clear. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of all legislators, but I got the sense of most legislators, including myself, feel from an equitable perspective, this is certainly the right thing to do. And there was no debate on that to any extent that I heard. And clearly, it's very, in my mind, it's very clear. I personally am going to be voting against this for a number of different items. One, I'm troubled by how quickly these things appear before us, and things need to get done in a rush manner, and not necessarily giving an appropriate amount of time to discuss these things. I raised a number of issues in committee today that I thought were reasonable, and and despite our panel of experts that we had at the table who were well versed in these areas, they didn't have any answers. They surmised, they guessed, and it's not fair necessarily for them to have the answers at the tables, but we're voting on items now that, that should be things that we understand before we, go into vote. The pricing consider on this is curious. We heard testimony from the Corrections Department that this item would have very little expectation, certainly based upon past history of it being triggered going forward. And the reality is that, based upon that, we received an assessment of in excess of $1 million for prior history. We receive an annual premium in the range of about $200,000 per year. There's an economic consideration, too, that goes along with the county, that the county has to pay for this. And however, whatever the financing is, and certainly the usurious financing opportunity presented us from the state is certainly, hopefully, that we as legislators evaluate in a proper manner and reject out of hand. Certainly I would if it came in front of us, paying 7% interest rates, when we have alternative financing rates at this point in time right now. But to look at our experience of our history, to say there's $1 million back, not even to have clarity at this point as to what the effective date and when this is going to be applied. Certainly we have expectations of when it could and when it should, but it's not part of our historical record, it's not part of our legislative record here. So again, from a parity perspective, I very much agree that this is the appropriate thing to do. For mechanical administrative reasons, I will be voting against it today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Any other legislators wish to choose to comment at this time? I'm just going to spend 2 seconds, if I might, just a prerogative of being a legislator. I certainly respect, we all respect everybody's opinion. In a number of committee deliberations over the last few weeks, is timely and necessary to come to today because the session in Albany is ending. We understand sometime next week, and so if this board chooses to home rule, this is the appropriate time to do it. So I thank you all for being here for this special session. As a matter of equity, as Mr. Smith indicated, I think to a person, we do recognize through the number of meetings that we've had, through the FSA committee, through the Parks and Labor joining us, through the two key committees of legislation and budget, a number of opportunities to have discussions, online, offline, discussions with the actuary I've had basically at the direction of this legislature, and then our budget and finance experts today. And so through all of that, we do recognize the equity, the fairness, that just because an individual who's in employ and a good individual employee is hurt by means of an inmate versus someone visiting the inmate isn't just not fair to that individual and their family. And so we're trying to redress that wrong. In terms of the finances of how we get to it, in Albany-esque, actuarial-esque, it's a curious calculation, and we might not like the numbers, but we at least do understand the numbers. Furthermore, we did run it through today appropriately, so our budget department, and it's interesting when you scratch the numbers out, we've kind of created a bit of a leveling of both the one-time and then the annual cost going forward. Looks like it'll cost us about $970,000 this December as a cash flow payment to the 2014 budget, then approximately about $470,000 a year later that we'll have to integrate in the 2015 budget, and then a leveling out of $220,000 thereafter. And we did talk to our good finance people and budget people to confirm and also to be able to be prepared to come up with those dollars. We do have, and a very important piece that did come out today, is the potential for a savings on an opportunity cost of 207C, which is the second tier of retirement benefits, strike of disability benefits available to our good correction officers should they need it. And that's a cost that would inure to taxpayers to compensate against some of these expenses because they wouldn't be necessary because the New York State retirement system would pick it up. So it's not as if it's a complete dollar out with no corresponding savings. And then the final piece, which was really one of the pieces that was important to all of us, and certainly in my mind, one that allowed me to go forward, is this experience rating and understanding after 5 years. That does give us a chance, and Mr. Smith, to your questions in committee today, does give us a chance to catch up, rebalance, if you will, these costs on a going forward basis. So in life, you get nothing for free. It is an investment. Legislators have to decide to the level of appropriateness of that, and that's what's called democracy and why we're here today to vote. So I will be in support of, and we'll see how colleagues go today. So with that said, why don't we take a long roll call?
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa? Yes. Mr. Burrows? Yes. Mr. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mr. Harcum?
Aye.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano? Yes. Ms. Marcotte? Aye. Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Aye.
approve 14-1.
Excellent. Seeing no other business before us, Legislator Borgia, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn and reconvene at our regularly scheduled meeting, which I believe now is June 23rd.
Third, that's right. Mr. Testa? Okay.
Ms. Borgia? Mr. Testa? Mr. Mazzano? Mr. Chairman.
Aye. We are adjourned.